Have you ever met the connector? Well, he ponders, he helps, he creates, he writes, he speaks. He basically connects people and brings them together. I speak about Paul Solano of PS and All Marketing Group. At psandallmarketinggroup.com, you will receive an assembled group of Paul's contacts and connections that cross into many sectors of life. Please contact Paul Solano at 617-240-4130 or psandallmarketinggroup@gmail.com if you are in the market for a wide array of services. Again, please contact The Connector, Paul Solano at 617-240-4130 or psandallmarketinggroup@gmail.com with any questions. And now, here's Paul Solano, the host of Paul Ponders.
Welcome to Hashtag Paul Ponders. I've really enjoyed bringing you fun, informed, intriguing, and modern podcasts. Many thanks to Hashtag Pod Pro Entertainment. Today's collaborating sponsor, Scott Albertson of Hashtag Project142.org, Riverworks Credit Union, NMLS number 410564, and Remax Renaissance Realty of Reading. Thanks for listening, rating, reviewing, and subscribing. Let Hashtag Paul Ponders begin. Greetings, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Well, today I have a very dear friend on our podcast. It is his fourth appearance on Paul Ponders. If you look back to episode 8, you look back to episode 23 and episode 43, and this is, I believe, episode number 76, I believe. I lose track after so many Paul Ponders podcasts, but I want to welcome back my dear friend, Bob Hyldburg. Bob, welcome.
Spirit of 76, that's the spirit. All right, nice to be with you, my friend, Paul Ponders.
Aye, Captain. Great to have you on. It's really great to have you on. And the focus of today's podcast is, in fact, going to be about Sarah Bradlee Fulton. Now, if you want to let our listeners in Paul Ponders land know who Sarah Bradlee Fulton was.
So in 1775, George Washington takes over the Continental Army, and the skirmish begins that eventually becomes the American Revolution. And Sarah Bradlee Fulton is living in Medford with her husband, John, and they end up having 10 children. And she really wanted to do what a lot of people here in Massachusetts, we wanted to have freedom. We wanted to have our own voices, and we wanted to really make our world better for her children and the community. So as things happen throughout Boston, we're coming up on the anniversary of the Boston Tea Party on December 16th. And one of the things with the Boston Tea Party that people remember is the people that were on the ship were dressed as Mohawk Indians and Narragansett Indians. Why did that happen? Why didn't they just go on there and throw the tea? Well, if you were caught doing anything treasonous or traitorous against the king, then the British soldiers would really come after you, and sometimes they'd burn your house down and make your life miserable. So some of the people that were involved in this, including Sarah and her sister and her brother Nathaniel, who lived in Griffith Wharf, which is really right on the harbor, right near the custom house. A lot of people came to her house and Nathaniel's house, and they dressed them as Indians, Mohawk Indians and Narragansett Indians, and they went on the ship, dumped the tea into the harbor during low tide, which wasn't the greatest thing because you could smell it for weeks. And if you ever caught fish in the harbor during that period of time, that tasted a little bit of tea, but 342 baskets of tea. And that was one of the rebellious things that was really significant to the East Indian Tea Company and the British Empire, because they were in debt from the 7 Years' War and they needed to raise money and raise taxes.
Not to interrupt, Bob, but I would say that people would say that that's a lot of tea.
That's a lot of tea. So with her, helping put the makeup on and dress them as Indians, and then afterwards removing it, she became known through the Daughters of Revolution, of the American Revolution, as the mother of the Tea Party. She was right there. And then when Bunker Hill, or Breed's Hill, as we call it, happened, and she went over there along with a bunch of other women. And when people were injured, she would help them. And there was actually a guy that got a bullet in his cheek, and she removed a bullet from his cheek. And a few months later, he came back to visit her. So she was someone that lived in Medford and wasn't that far away from Boston. And then as the war went on, she became a spy. And a lot of the women that were in the homes of the British officers found out information. All right, Thursday night, we're going to be doing this. This week, we're going to be doing that. So she'd be in the homes, and she would actually be part of the spy network. And there were a couple times that she actually rowed across the river to give information to George Washington's troops. With secret coating in her clothing or disappearing ink. And the British didn't really worry too much about the women, but she risked her life to really get some information. And then when George Washington became president, he came back to Boston for 5 days in October of 1789, and he actually came to her house in Medford Heights. And now it's called Fulton Heights and Fulton Street and Fulton Spring Road. So there's sections of Medford that are named after her. And he thanked her, President George Washington thanked her for her courage, her fortitude, and her attitude of being calm under pressure and everything that she did during the war. So there's a website out there called Looking Back at MedfordHistory.com. Looking Back at MedfordHistory.com, that there's a campaign that's going on. We're just wrapping up the final stages of building a statue, a 6-foot-high bronze statue on a 2-foot base that'll be on the city of Medford City Hall grounds, and we're going to be erecting that on Patriots Day in 2026. So Robert Shore, the sculptor that has done a bunch of different things, including the Sigmund Freud statue in Worcester and the FAO Schwartz teddy bear that you might have seen in front of the Schwartz Toy Company, and now it's in front of the Tufts Medical Center. He's done Ted Williams, Red Auerbach, and Joe DiMaggio. He's done tremendous amounts of historical statues as well in museums all over the world. He's completed the process of bronzing this statue of Sarah Bradlee Fulton, and we're here to promote what she did during the war and her effort to make women really recognized among the Abigail Adams and the Martha Washingtons and other women that are from this area that really should be honored. So looking back at MedfordHistory.com is a place you can share and help us finish up the final stages of that.
That is absolutely fabulous, Bob, and I thank you for sharing that with us. Now, I think back to many scholarships and awards that I've heard at many local high schools, and I believe that there's a Daughters of the American Revolution scholarship. I would assume that Sarah Bradlee Fulton is recognized by the Daughters of the American Revolution?
She is, and she's recognized by the Boston Tea Party. The first book that was written about her, as Sarah Bradlee aged in the 70s and 80s, and she actually lived to 94 years old, she would be telling stories. And there was a woman that actually wrote a book about her a few years after Sarah passed in I think it was 1825, that talks about her exploits. And she's been mentioned in numerous books. And I've been on LinkedIn over these last few weeks, and especially this week, The American Revolution, a documentary by Ken Burns that's out on PBS, and you'll probably be seeing that throughout this 250th and certainly throughout the future. There's a lot of things that are talked about the women behind the scenes in the American Revolution. So we want to elevate Medford and the contributions of the people in Medford, and Captain Isaac Hall and Governor Brooks and et cetera. But Sarah Bradlee Fulton deserves a statue and deserves more recognition because of what she did and helped form this country to be what it is now.
That is super. Now, I believe you mentioned that there was a fundraising effort, to in fact complete the statue and really just make it happen fully. So what's that website again?
So right now it's looking back at medfordhistory.com. So it's all one word, but looking back at medfordhistory.com. The statue is done, and we're going to raise the money. So we've had over 400 people just donate $25 or $50. We don't need a lot. We had a guy that says, if you raise 10,000, I'll raise another 10,000. That's already been contributed. We've had people that are giving us $500, and we've had a couple people give us 20,000. So right now we're in the final stages, and by the time the evacuation day on March 17th, we'll have the money. But every little bit helps, and certainly the more that we raise, the more we can get more publicity about this. But it's done. It's magnificent, and I've seen a smaller version. I haven't seen the full version, but we're going to be seeing that over the next few weeks. It is spectacular, and she deserves it.
Absolutely. And kudos to the Medford Arts Council and for what they stand for with their public benefit and cultural vitality in making this really happen.
Yes, I mean, it's a whole community thing. We've had the Sarah Bradlee Fulton Day for 5 years now at the Salem Street Burial Grounds, the Looking Back at MedfordHistory.com nonprofit, a 501c3. All your contributions are tax deductible. And we've had George Washington, this guy, John Koopman the third. He's in a lot of documentaries, and he comes up and he shares about a 20-minute story about her significance and evacuation day and all the things that we were able to scoot and scare Boston out of the British out of Boston. Let's say that fast. The British out of Boston that day. But the Battle of Breed's Hill or Bunker Hill was a huge momentum that really propelled this future to be, this country to become what it was. We just had a bunch of people. I mean, certainly we've had some military training. And Paul Revere, actually, his first stop was in Medford at the Captain Isaac Hall House, and we celebrate that every year as well with the Lancers and Paul Revere coming from Charlestown out to Lexington. But looking back in Medford history is a nonprofit that is really gaining force, and people are starting to hear more about what we're doing. And just a little reminder, Amelia Earhart, in 1925 lived in Medford. So there's some other famous women from Medford that we're looking to celebrate. She's got a mural in one of the businesses there, but let's put a statue up for Sarah Bradlee Fulton to bring the community together, bring some inclusion, and really bring some historic stories and courage and fortitude. I can't even imagine what she was thinking, having 9 kids and risking her life to bring messages across, or to be involved in the Boston Tea Party, knowing that, if the British ever found the list of people that were part of that, and they destroyed the list a few months after they did it, just in case no one would find out. But this was all pretty significant, the Boston Tea Party and some of the things that happened here in the Boston area to make this world what we have now with the Constitution and the freedoms that we have.
Without a doubt. And I do recall back on Patriots Day, April 19th of 2025 this year, I had the pleasure of meeting Laura Duggan, who's the president of Looking Back at Medford History, Inc. And we had a nice chat regarding what you and her were doing at the Captain Isaac Hall house, I believe, on that day.
That's exactly right. So Paul Revere came to the Captain Isaac Hall house, and I was dressed as Captain Isaac Hall, and Laura Duggan, the president of Looking Back at Medford History, she started this whole process. Was Mrs. Hall, and the whole idea is that when Paul Revere was on his trip from Charlestown to Lexington, he stopped there because Captain Isaac Hall had a rum factory, and he stopped not only to give his horse a little bit of rest, but to get a shot of rum and get back on his horse and go off to Lexington and eventually get captured and conquered and lose his horse. Although it wasn't his horse, it was a horse that he borrowed. But a little story behind the story. But yeah, so we celebrate that every year. They shut down the streets, the state police and the Lancers, and we actually read the Henry Wadsworth Longfellow poem about Paul Revere, which isn't exactly accurate, but it just happens that as my one of my monikers is Historian Bob, and one of the reasons that I'm Historian Bob of Boston is that Henry Wadsworth Longfellow is in my genealogy. So
Really?
I looked it up, and Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry Wadsworth Longfellow are in my mother's side of the family going back 400 years. So I guess it's in my blood and in my heart to kind of share this now when I can.
That is super. And were they all wearing Stetson hats? Because the Stetson family is in your genealogy as well.
Exactly right. And there was a Stetson that actually made ships that lived in Medford too. So Cornell Robert Stetson came over and settled in Norwell and Hanover and Weymouth, and then expanded over the next couple hundred years to the Stetson hat and all that Stetson shoe. And so, yes, my mother's side of the family is pretty famous.
That is absolutely fabulous. Well, Bob, as we start to wind down and we look forward to having you on WATD 95.9 FM for many more occasions, and we'll be talking about the Boston Tea Party on that. How could our listeners in Paul Ponders Land reach you?
Well, the best bet is to go to the Facebook group, Why We Love Boston. Why We Love Boston Facebook group, and reach us there. And go to the website, looking back at medfordhistory.com. We appreciate that.
Absolutely, medfordhistory.com. Well, Bob Hyldburg, I want to thank you for being on Paul Ponders for the fourth time, and many more to come down the road as we keep on recording all these wonderful episodes and all. But I want to, again, thank you for being on. And one more shout out for the website.
So Laura Duggan is running this, and the website is www.lookingbackatmedfordhistory.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Bob, as I always say, that's a wrap, and hashtag indeed.
Indeed. Well done. We'll see you down the road. USA, 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 baby.
Hashtag indeed. I trust that you have enjoyed hashtag Paul Ponders. Again, my name is Paul Solano of PS&All Marketing Group, and I may be reached via email at paul@paulponders.com to do some more pondering. Many thanks to my longtime collaborative friend and associate, Chalonzo Amos of Pod Pro Entertainment, in bringing you our fun, exciting, and informative podcasts. You rock, Techie Chalonzo. With PS&All Marketing Group, I created a side gig to connect you and get things done. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me at paul@paulponders.com with any questions. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Paul Ponders. Follow us on Twitter at Paul Ponders Pod. Follow us on Instagram at Paul Ponders Podcast. Thank you again for listening to hashtag Paul Ponders, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our website, paulponders.com, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Subscribe, stream, rate, and review our shows. Your ratings and reviews help our show reach new audiences. Produced by Pod Pro Entertainment, hashtag Paul Ponders lives within a network of podcasts located at podproentertainment.com, hashtag the new radio. Until we meet again, my friend, stay well, hashtag indeed.